for attending, everyone. And my name is Danny, as I mentioned, and I work as a customer care manager here at Amitree, the makers of Folio. And my job, obviously, is to care for the customers and make sure that our customers are getting the most out of Folio and are happy with the product and are able to see value and generate value for themselves and for their clients out of Folio. So in that vein, what I want to talk about today is some of our perhaps lesser known features, or some of our underused features that people who subscribe to Folio can take advantage of. And we'll talk a little bit about those features and how they can really spruce up the way that you interact with your clients. And of course, today, unfortunately, I'm not sure where everyone is from in the world, but we're all very well aware that a lot more interaction with clients is going to have to be done digitally in the next few weeks and few months due to world events. And this is really a great time to make use of Folio, which really allows you to, even though personal interaction might be somewhat curtailed, allows you to keep running your business in a digital fashion to some extent, and keeping up with certain things. Obviously, there might be some limitations, but using a digital communication is now more important than ever. So the first thing that I'm going to discuss is our template, our timeline templates. I'm sure all of you have seen the way that Folio allows you to create a timeline with different options, things that the lenders have to do, the seller has to do, etc. And these timelines, what I wanted to show you is that whereas you can use some standard timelines, you can use standard timelines like our buyer or listing timeline. You're also able to create new templates for your timeline, and then you can apply those as well. And I'll show you how to apply them in just a moment. But here we have a timeline template that we can use. We can call it anything you'd like. We can call it example timeline, example buyer timeline. In this case, we'll use an example for the buyer. You could, of course, use a listing timeline as well. However you'd like to create that timeline. And it will apply either to buyers or sellers as you've designated it. And then when you create this new timeline, it will be based initially on the original buyer timeline, but you can make all sorts of changes to this. So for instance, when the offer is accepted, you can say when the initial deposit is done, is required. You can change that from being, let's say, 2 days after offer accepted to, let's say, 7 days after offer is accepted. Or you could do something else. You could say that this is based on the closing date, and say that you need the deposit has to be done, let's say 30 days before the closing date, and you can have things managed that way. Add status here would, of course, be something for the buyer to perform. They need to provide the deposit, and you can have that added in 30 days before the closing date here. You can also, of course, add reminders, as you can see. Let's say 2 days before, you can send them an email. And you can also decide who gets to see this. So here, this is something that the buyer is going to want to see. You're going to want to have everyone on the shared timeline see this. But you can also add into the template, new things, for instance, that you have to prepare documents for signatures. And here you can say that that has to be done 5 days after the offer is accepted. And here you can set the status as pending something that you need to do. And you can say that this will only appear for you. This won't appear for the buyer or for the opposing agent or anybody else. Of course, you can also have it be everyone who has edit permissions, so that perhaps you and your transaction coordinator or an assistant will also be able to see this view, as long as you share this timeline with that person with edit permissions. And with this, this is a really powerful tool, because you can create all sorts of different elements to the timeline in the way that you generally operate. You can create custom buying templates, custom selling templates, and you can have a lot of control over how the templates look and what you're able to see and what others are able to see. And so this way you can always create different custom templates. One thing that we can show you now is how those custom templates will affect the way that you are able to operate. So let's go one moment here. Let's go back to, now that you have this template created, you can go back to here where you have your folders. And let's say you have a folder here of a buyer who isn't yet set as under contract. So you can go here and decide that you're going to put this buyer under contract. And once you've put that buyer under contract, we'll add in an address. And we'll give this the address name. We're going to change the folder to be just from the buyer's email address. We're going to change the folder to be the address name. This is also something that people sometimes neglect to do, but then you want to make sure that the folder is named after the property, as most people like it. Of course, you can name it after the buyer if you'd prefer. And now we've put this buyer under contract. We've updated the smart folder. But what we haven't yet done is applied, you can see here, the timeline is the standard buyer timeline. This doesn't have the same timeline that we've created. So here what we can do now is decide to apply the timeline for this new folder that we just created, or that we just managed. And here we can put, we can continue setup. And here we can put in the date of the offer accepted. Let's say the offer accepted is today. The estimated closing date, let's put April 30th. And here we can decide which template we want. You can here put in our example template. You can, let's see. You'll see that you can put in the example buyer timeline, and then you can have that timeline created the way that that you'd like it. Here's all of the features that we have, as well as some others that we can add in. And if we ever needed to, we could change the timeline. Of course, we could change the template. And if we changed the template and then later wanted this same template to apply, or if we created the buyer as under contract after we already had a template set up, what you can do is you can use this apply timeline template. And now here I can decide to do the standard buyer template or my test template, or I can decide, of course, to use the example one that we just created. And that will change everything on the timeline to represent what we've created on the template, and that will reflect with any changes that we've created. So that's a little bit about creating custom templates. And also, if the template isn't towards your liking, or you want to apply a template to a timeline that's already been created or to a transaction that's already been created, how you can apply that template retroactively. We'll stop here for a second and ask if there are any questions on anything that we've discussed up till now with adding templates or applying templates after a transaction has been created. And Charmaine, if you'd like to just let me know if there are any questions up to this point. Nothing yet? Okay. So if that's all clear and there's no questions about that, then I want to just show you some other features that we have surrounding the creation of timelines and templates. And that's going to be the regular collaborators and your resources and service providers. So in terms of the collaborators, very often if you work with a particular assistant or a particular transaction coordinator or a particular escrow company, you might want to have them always be a member of the people with whom you share the timelines. So let's say you have a particular assistant, and let's call this assistant Jane Doe. Let's use this, Jane Cozy. We'll use this person. And we can say that this person should be suggested whenever I share the timeline. This person should be suggested as a collaborator. And that way, every time I create a timeline, it will suggest sharing Jane as one of the initial sharees. Or I could say that Jane, as my assistant, should always get it regardless of suggestions, and she should always get it with edit permissions. And so we can set up Jane to always receive edit permissions, and we can say that another person, maybe this broker, let's use Holly as the broker, will say suggest this person when I share the timelines. And this allows you to create timelines a little bit more effectively. You'll see now, once I've saved that, when I go to the timeline that I created here, where is this? The 349 Hillsdale. We can see, you can select the buyer. Let's put the buyer there and continue. And now we can see that you can share the timeline. Here you'll see that the buyer is already added. You know what? I just have to reapply the timeline now to make sure that I get my collaborators in. And now when I share the template, you can see that I'll have him, Quentin, as view only, and I can see that we can see as well here that we'll also have suggested people to share, but actually that's only when I create them on a new timeline. So when I create it, if I were to create a new timeline, for a buyer, So here you can see that I will get, that it's automatically shared. You can see it's automatically shared with this person, and I can invite the broker. It's automatically set up that I can, that it's suggested that I invite my broker when I create that. So that is the way that you can very easily ensure that you can remember to share it with all your collaborators, and you don't have to each time add in different collaborators. Of course, if you want to, you can always share with different collaborators, but if there's someone who you're going to share with on a consistent basis, this will save you time and effort and prevent you from forgetting to accidentally share a timeline with a very relevant party that needs to be notified about the timeline. Another thing that I want to show you quickly is about resources that you can add to a timeline. Here you can see you can send, you can create different resources, and these appear here on the left-hand side, on the right-hand side, I'm sorry, of the timeline, where you can have some different, you know, here a moving company that you might want to suggest to the buyer. An insurance company, we have a special deal with some insurance companies, and you can use those directly. You can see you can get homeowners insurance quotes directly from Liberty Mutual or from Lemonade, depending on the area that the client that the property exists in. Or you can, of course, if you work with a particular insurance provider, you can choose to add your insurance provider for yourself. You can take off the home insurance concierge, the stock option, and you can add your own if you'd like. So that's certainly a possibility. If the stock providers are checked off, are added to the timeline, then when it is time for the buyer to look into home insurance, we'll be happy to suggest that they do that. Also, we have they can see where what cable companies are available in their area if they need cable or internet lookup. You can get we have a direct connection to the U.S. Postal Service. If they need to do a change of address, they can do that quickly from here as well. And of course, you're able to make changes to these at any time. And you're, of course, able to add your own options of companies that you can have those companies appear. So that therefore you're welcome to have whatever resources you want, and this makes it very easy and nice for your buyer, for your client, or for the seller to make these kind of moves, and they have these resources as very handy resources for them to make use of. So that's the last thing that I want to say about the timelines specifically, and I'm happy to answer any further questions about timelines. One other thing that I wanted to discuss is some of the integrations that we have, and I'll just do those quickly just because these are a little simpler. You'll see that one thing that you can do is you can connect Folio to Google Drive. So for instance, my Folio, this account is connected to Google Drive. You can see that here in the settings, that it's connected to Google Drive. Here you could, of course, disconnect and reconnect it. The value of that is that if I go to Google Drive here, you'll see that I have automatically different folders that are created. You can see here for each of the properties that I've created and that I'm managing, you can see any documents that have been related to those to that property are automatically stored in Google Drive, and I can access them directly here from the timeline as well. I can go to Files. I can see those documents. And here you can see that you can create here as well. You can, another feature that we have is integration with DocuSign. Let's say I needed one of these documents to get a signature from one of my clients. I could very easily do that. I can just click on here. Let's say I needed this seller to sign on a document, and I can go right into DocuSign. Here it will load up my DocuSign, and this is also something that you can do automatically in the settings. You can have it integrated with DocuSign. So those Google Drive and DocuSign integrations, you'll see it'll bring in the right here. You'll see who needs to sign, who it's coming from. You can set it all up right here very easily. So those integrations with DocuSign and Google Drive really allow you to manage everything directly from this timeline, and including keeping track of documents and making sure that all the files are in order and sorted by transaction. And you can very easily go into to get signatures from DocuSign. You don't have to go through each email to remember where were the attachments for a particular email within a particular folder. They're all available for you right here. I see we have a question that's regarding contacts. So if you have a particular contact and you want to add an additional phone number, so we don't currently, the way that it currently looks, you'll see that they can only have a single phone number. That is an interesting theory, an interesting idea. Somebody was asking before about having the ability to add a secondary phone number. That's something that's an interesting theory. You can, of course, here in the address, something can be a little more free form. So here you can add a second phone number if you want. It'll be there. It won't be listed as a phone number, but you can add an additional, under address, you can add an additional phone number there if you'd like. But that is an interesting theory, and it's something that we could discuss about being able to add more than one phone number to a contact. So thank you very much for asking that question. If there are any other questions regarding anything you've seen up to now, be happy to answer those as well. Just another couple of interesting features while we're waiting possibly for another question. I'll show you a couple of other features that we have which could be useful. One is if you're closing a folder, you can see I have a particular one that's closing today. Here we have, this is the closing day. So let's say I'm about to close a folder, close a file, and this house is going to close, and now I want to get a recommendation. As you know, today, the way that anyone finds a real estate agent or really any professional online is that they're going to search for reviews about that person online. You can see here, you can ask for a review right from the timeline. I can ask the buyer for a timeline. I can add here a Zillow or Facebook or other review site URL that I can put in there. And people can, and then I can send this out, and I can just put in a link here. That's not a valid link, of course, but just as an example. And here I can say, I can use this example text, or I can add it, I can edit it however I'd like. There's an idea of how your experience working with me was. You could change the text however you'd like, and you can send the request. And then Holly or whoever else you want to add as somebody who is relevant to this particular transaction will get this email. They'll get it from the person who created this timeline, and they'll be able to very easily add a review for you, and that way you can very quickly collect reviews from satisfied customers. Another thing that you can do with Folio, last thing that I want to talk about today, is getting the most out of Folio in terms of value. We also want you to, of course, use our features to get greater value from the product itself, but also be able to save yourself some money. And a great way to do that is to use this link over here, the Give Credit, Earn Credit. Basically, what this allows you to do is recommend Folio to other real estate agents you know who might be interested in using Folio for their own transactions. And you get $25 once you refer to 5 people who sign up at least for a trial account. All they have to do is sign up for a trial account, and you'll get $25 off on your Folio account on your next renewal date. But not only that, you'll be doing these individuals a favor as well. Not only by making their own lives easier, by giving them all the organization and business features that Folio provides, they'll also save $10. And I want to just end with a special secret tip for people who've joined the webinar, and that is that starting on Monday, we're actually going to be doubling this credit until the end of March. You're going to be able to actually make even more money from recommending Folio, and make it an even cheaper proposition for other agents that you know to sign up. So you'll be able to get some goodwill and some cash at hand out of that feature. And with that, that's basically all that I wanted to discuss today in terms of the features that we use. And I can hang around for another few minutes. Certainly, if there are any questions, we'll be happy to answer.